Aloha guys, welcome to Eat and Be Eaten Hawaii. We've got an exciting recipe for you this week. This is easy homemade SAIMIN. SAIMIN is Hawaii's noodle soup made with Chinese style noodles, dashi broth, char siu, roasted pork, kamaboko, fish cake. Just like ramen, there'll be a boiled egg, and many recipes include spam as well. This is how to make easy homemade SAIMIN.
On our channel, we are on a journey to discover everything we can about the food and the food culture of Hawaii. Check out our videos on Kalua pig, poke, and more. This is Eat and Be Eaten Hawaii. Aloha.
Let's start with the char siu, since this is the longest step in making a homemade SAIMIN. So char siu is marinated roasted pork, and it's marinated with Chinese 5-spice, which is made up, as you can see here, of whole cloves, cinnamon, star anise, fennel seeds, and also Szechuan peppercorns. The 5-spice is mixed with a combination of soy sauce, honey, hoisin sauce, and some kind of rice wine vinegar, and it creates a rich, sticky marinade. It also has a red color that nowadays is often used with red food coloring, but traditionally comes from a prepared red bean fermented paste. Because of the spices and the hoisin sauce, char siu is sweet. It's also got a dry heat from the peppercorns and a licoricey flavor from the star anise, as well as saltiness from the hoisin and the soy sauce. For the purposes of an easy homemade recipe, you can use pre-made jarred char siu sauce for marinating and roasting your pork. Like any roast meat recipe, fattier cuts are the best to use, so either pork butt, pork shoulder are really good, and you want to cut it in half like I did here, or even lengthwise, and then marinate that pork in your sauce. Since I'm using out of the jar the pre-made, I don't have to do anything to it. Just roll around my pork in the marinade, and then I'm going to let it sit for 48 hours until 2 days later the time for roasting begins. The long marinating period will be worth it to allow the flavors to get into that pork and make for a delicious end product. Make sure you give it at least 24 hours though, covered and into the refrigerator. Okay, so once the time comes to roast your pork, this has been marinating now for 48 hours. You're gonna get a piece of tin foil, line the bottom of a pan. And then we're going to set the pork on here so the heat can get underneath and cook through evenly. Take the pork, let the excess marinade drip off. We're going to baste it as we take it out of the oven with the marinade. For now, one piece, and we left the skin on so that fat can render as it cooks. Let that drip off. And on. I am going to keep the oven on 350 degrees Fahrenheit for the entire cook. The first round will be 30 minutes in the oven. While that's going, let's get into the most important aspect of any noodle soup, which is the broth. In this case, unlike ramen, this is going to be a seafood broth. It's a type of dashi, which is the Japanese stock made with dried kombu seaweed and dried bonito fish flakes. In the case of SAIMIN, instead of the fish flakes, we use dried opai, which are dried shrimp. There are crystals on the kombu as well as the shrimp that create enormous amounts of umami very quickly in this stock. Dried shiitake mushrooms also add more umami, and some sliced ginger rounds out the flavor profile. First step is to go into cold water with the dried kombu, dried kelp seaweed. I'm also going to at that point go in with the slices of ginger and shiitake mushrooms, and this can even be done overnight, just steeping in the cold water to enhance the flavor. And once it gets on the stove, the lowest flame possible is what we're going to use, and slowly bring that water up to just before a boil. allowing the flavors and the umami from the seaweed to seep in. And just before it starts to boil, we're going to remove the seaweed, the kombu, because it will become slimy and unpleasant and leave an unpleasant flavor. So we're going to get that out, then bring back up to a boil the stock and go in with the dried shrimp. And then we're going to let that boil for just 60 seconds before turning the stock off and allowing it to cool and allowing the flavor and the umami from the shrimp to seep into the stock for a further 10 minutes. And then we're going to strain everything and be left with a clear, fragrant, flavorful seafood stock. So now back to the char siu. After 30 minutes in the oven, again at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, we take the roast pork out and we're going to flip it and baste it with more of our char siu marinade and then put it back in the oven for an additional 30 minutes. So we're now going to be up to a total of 1 hour in the oven when this stage is done. At that point, we take back out of the oven. We're going to continue to baste the pork with the char siu sauce, flip it one more time, so now it's back to its original position, baste again, and back into the oven for 20 minutes. While we do that, we're going to mix a little bit of honey into our marinade, and after the 20-minute mark, we're going to take the pork out one more time, and we're going to give it a final baste with that honey marinade combination. And once that final baste is done, we're going to go into the oven again for an additional 10 minutes, and then we're going to take the char siu out and it will be pow, it'll be ready. So that's 1.5 hours or 90 minutes total of roasting time in the oven for our char siu pork. You can see the nice blackened edges. The marinade has reduced to a crispy, lovely consistency, and after letting it rest, we can slice into our char siu. The spices in the char siu give a bit of a Vietnamese pho broth quality to SAIMIN. The other toppings to fill out our soup is going to be sliced Chinese cabbage. We are going to slice green onions or scallions. And we are also going to slice pink kamaboko fish cake. It's a type of steamed Japanese fish cake. Finally, hard-boiled eggs. I'm going to do 8 minutes on my eggs so that the yolks still have some orange color and texture to them. And then we come to the final ingredient, which is the noodles. I am using Sun Noodle Company Hawaiian SAIMIN noodles. These are springy ramen style, but not quite as chewy as ramen. And that's due to potassium carbonate in the dough, which gives the noodles their characteristic springy texture. After 8 minutes, I will remove the eggs from the water and allow them to cool. Slice them lengthwise down the middle. Okay, now we're going to do the final cook and assemble the soup. To put together the final soup, I'm going to start with some char siu and Chinese cabbage in with my dashi broth. I'm going to add a little bit of shoyu soy sauce, get that going, get those char siu flavors into the broth, and then go in with my noodles. These are fresh wheat noodles. They only take about 60 seconds in the broth. I'll turn it off and let them cook through for another minute or so in the warm broth. And then I will get to assembling my final soup in the bowl. The condiment for SAIMIN is Chinese hot mustard, which you mix the powder with a little bit of water, and it creates another nice source of dry heat like the white peppercorns and the Sichuan peppercorns. So into the bowl with the broth, the noodles, the char siu. I'm going to layer 3 slices of kamaboko fish cake, the hard-boiled egg, in with the green onions sprinkled over the top, and there you go. Homemade, easy SAIMIN. Let us know, guys, in the comments what you thought. Do you have any suggestions or anything you do differently? And we will see you next time with another installment in our SAIMIN series that is going on now. Aloha. We have several SAIMIN restaurant reviews on the Big Island, first in Hilo at Nori's SAIMIN and Snacks, highly regarded place, and then also up in Waimea at Ippy's Hawaiian Barbecue. So if you want to check out either of those reviews, You can do that too in the link. Aloha, everybody.